To Breckland Planning for this morning, or should I say good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, because it's like we normally only get this on the summer holiday, and that's only maybe 1 or 2 children. So it's great to see young people so interested in local government. Anyway, could I first of all start with our general housekeeping? First of all, fire exits. There are 2 fire exits on this wall here. There's a fire exit down by the lavatories and also the door that you came in. If a fire alarm does go off, and I have not been informed if there's a test one, so if we hear the fire alarm, we will treat it as genuine and we will vacate the building. I would ask you to then congregate in the car park. If you're concerned about where you're going, just follow this lot because they're fairly quick when it comes to getting out of the building. Trying to get them in the building is difficult, but getting them out is never a problem. Could I also ask you to switch your phones or mobile devices to silent or switch them off? If your phone does go off and disturbs the meeting, it's a fine of £10 to the chairman's charity. So it's a good cause, and the chairman's charity is only lasting for a few more days, and I never get it right. So the chairman of the council, not me as chairman of this committee, chairman of the council, Councillor Sam Taylor, is with us today. So Sam, would you shout out or put your microphone on and tell everyone what your last few days of chosen charity is, please? I won't count that little bell that's tinkling somewhere because it might have been a child's toy, but I'm sure it was a phone, but let that be a caution to you. Okay, our next item is a procedure. When an item is called, I have a list of speakers who are registered to speak, and I'll ask you to come and sit down on the right-hand side, as our people here are showing you how it's done. And then the officer will do the presentation, the speakers will speak, and then it's up to members for their input or questions, and then we will take a vote at the end of that. Next, the introductions. My team for today, on my left-hand side, I've got Mike Horn, who's a solicitor to the council. On my right-hand side, my right-hand woman, Rebecca Collins, who's the senior planning officer. At the end, we've got Will Hornbuckle. Is that not your title? You gave me a funny look.
No, that's not my title.
Well, near enough. We've got Will Hornbuckle, and at the back, we've got Chris Hobson. You're not going to get upset because I didn't do your title right, are you? Good. Okay, that's the introductions done, so let's get stuck in. Item number 1 today is the minutes, and it's to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of April 2026. Do I have your agreement from the floor to sign those? Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Oh, sorry. I've done the tops and I didn't do the bottom. No, I always forget you until I want you. You know that. I must tell you, this is Julie Britton, who's from our Democratic Services team. She holds it all together, but she has her back to me all the time. I keep forgetting her. And also Chris Fitzgerald, who done the handling in at the door. He's our usher for today. But anyway, item 2, apologies and substitutes. Please, Julie.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 2 apologies today. We have apologies from the Vice Chairman, Councillor Peter Wilkinson, and we also have apologies from Councillor Annie Blackburn, and we have Councillor David Blackburn in attendance for Councillor Annie Blackburn.
Okay, thank you, David. And also because I haven't got my Vice Chairman here, and I don't envisage any reason why I should not continue the meeting, but from the floor, if that is the case, I've already had words with Councillor Bambridge because of his seniority on the committee that he would take over as Vice Chairman. But that I will take if needed. So our next item, declarations of interest and representations. We will take them as each item is raised.
I'm declaring interest now on item 9B as my grandson, 2-year-old
That's
grandson,
fine.
attends
And-
that, and I feel in the
Yeah, we
interest
will
of,
make a note of it, but
in the interest of transparency,
Yeah.
I shall not take part.
yeah, just shows you didn't listen to me. I said as each item is raised, but never mind. It is early. I'm going to forgive you for that. Item 4, Chairman's announcements. We tried a new procedure on panel, and that was to send out invitations, of which David, Councillor Blackburn, and his wife, Councillor Blackburn as well, same surname, well done, have agreed to come and sit on a panel. And it's good because it gets you to see, it's not tricky. I think it's quite good fun, and we get through and sort some issues out. So, and you are coming to sit on one with your wife at the same time, I believe, to witness. Oh.
Watching.
Apparently, I didn't know Annie has agreed to come. Oh, that's good. Well, there we go. Oh, God, different. But anyway, so that worked very well. So you may receive an invitation if you haven't done one for a while. So we'll sort that out. Also, just to remind you that we have the viability presentation on the 23rd of June at 10 a.m. That is out to all members, but as many of you as can come would be good.
We haven't sent the emails out yet.
Oh, you haven't sent the emails? Oh, well, I'm preempting you. Put it in your diaries. My system works better. And also, now just to bring you up to date with young Rebecca here, who done her challenge along with 3 other Breckland staff members and officers, and raised a grand total of £2,160. So well done, Rebecca. Yeah, I'm glad you're here today and not running around the county somewhere. Okay, we're moving swiftly on. Item 5, requests to defer. No requests to defer. Any items of urgent business? No, not at all. So item 7 is local plan update. Simon or Gemma couldn't be here today. They're in meetings, so it's being handled by Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chairman. So a message from Gemma. The local plan is continuing at pace with the Regulation 19 consultation due to be carried out subject to approval at a special Cabinet meeting on the 13th of July. Following this, there will be a public consultation for a period of at least 6 weeks, ending mid-September. The agenda and accompanying documents will be published early July, and this is in line with the LDS published in March 2025. To progress the local plan, an advisory visit with a planning inspector has been carried out, which was useful and informative. There is an all-member briefing being carried out on the 26th of May, which you will have received an invite to. This is a hybrid session and will detail key changes to the local plan from the Regulation 18 consultation and give a general update on where we are and how the plan is progressing. As previously stated, all members which have had changes to the site allocations within their wards will be contacted, as will parish councils, to give a high-level brief of the proposed changes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions at all? No? Okay, thank you. So moving swiftly on, item 8, deferred applications. We have an item from Dearham which we will take within this agenda today, but we're going to start with item 9A at Sam Tony, PL 2025-0756. And I have speakers on this of Colin Hunter, yes sir, Mark Simons, and Councillor Linda Turner here as well, who is actually the neighbouring ward rep for this particular item. So I'm going to hand over to Will, please, and he will take the item.
Good morning. So this application seeks full planning permission for the change of use of land to a gypsy and traveller site comprising 12 permanent pitches, including the regularisation of an existing pitch together with associated hard standing and the conversion of an existing building to a site manager's dwelling at Sam Tony, Ottawa Kennels. This is a location plan, so just to note this is as existing, showing more pitches already in situ, but the number is to be reduced from those unauthorised on the site. And this is the site in relation to the settlement boundary, indicated in circled red there, approximately 1.8 miles to Shipdham settlement boundary to the northeast, and just over 2 miles to Watton settlement boundary to the south. The site is situated alongside the A1075 and encompassed by agricultural land and open countryside in each cardinal direction, so it's a very rural context. Its proposed site plan, as stated, the number of pitches already in situ has been reduced. The proposed plan depicts a mixture of statics and touras. The use of an existing single-storey building to the south of the plot is to be used for a manager's dwelling, a grassed area and path with new trees, and a new single centralised access point. Some existing elevations of the current building on site, which is for a manager's dwelling. Some proposed elevations of it there. Then some various site photos. So this is along the highway and the boundary looking in towards the existing access. And then just various photos of the site itself. That's the existing building to be used as a manager's dwelling. And then just various photos around the site showing the statics there. So officers acknowledge that there is an identified unmet need for gypsy and traveller accommodation within Breckland, which attracts weight in favour of the proposal. The applicant is also accepted as meeting the planning policy for traveller sites definition of gypsies and travellers, and these matters weigh in favour of the scheme. However, notwithstanding these benefits, officers consider that the adverse impacts of the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh them. The principal issue here is, as set out within the officer report, it relates to highway safety. The proposal would significantly intensify the use of the existing access onto the A1075, increasing the site from a single pitch to a 12-pitch development. The A1075 at this location is a fast-moving rural road, subject to a 50-mile-per-hour speed limit, and concerns regarding highway safety have been raised consistently throughout the application process. Norfolk County Council Highways object to the proposal and advise that they are not satisfied that the required visibility displays of 2.4 metres by 160 metres have been adequately demonstrated. The Highway Authority further advise that achieving those displays would require substantial removal of established roadside hedgerow and mature trees. Officers are therefore not satisfied that a safe, suitable and deliverable access can be achieved and maintained for the scale of development proposed in accordance with our policies TR01, TR02 and HOW08 of the Breckland Local Plan, as well as Section 9 of the MPPF. Furthermore, whilst the precise extent of vegetation removal required has not been conclusively demonstrated through the submitted information, both the Highway Authority and Breckland Tree Officer raised significant concerns that achieving the necessary visibility displays would likely necessitate substantial removal of established roadside hedgerow and mature trees. Officers consider that such works would result in harmful erosion of the rural character of the area and materially diminish the existing natural screening of the site. As such, the proposal gives rise to an unresolved conflict between the requirements of highway safety and the retention of important landscape features. The concerns regarding highway safety are reinforced by both Ovington Parish Council and Sametoney Parish Council, both objecting to the proposal. Both councils specifically raised concerns regarding the history of accidents along this stretch of the A1075, the constrained nature of the access, poor visibility, and the risks associated with slow-moving vehicles entering and exiting the site onto a fast-moving road. The importance of these highway concerns is also reinforced by recent appeal decisions within the district, namely Bordeswell, where inspectors have given substantial weight to highway safety issues despite acknowledging an unmet need for traveller accommodation. The second key issue then relates to character and appearance. The site currently benefits from established roadside hedgerow and mature trees, which contribute positively to the rural character of the area and provide important screening of the site from the public highway. The extent of vegetation removal required to facilitate the access visibility displays would result in significant harm to the character and appearance of the countryside, eroding the existing verdant roadside character and introducing a more open and urbanising form of development within this rural location. Officers also consider the site to be in an unsustainable location with limited access to services and facilities by sustainable modes of transport, resulting in high reliance in private car. And then finally, just to note that draft UU was submitted during the application process for Norfolk Rams, which was overlooked when finalising the committee report. This is pointed out by Mark and Angela. However, at present, no signed agreement or confirmation of payment of the required monitoring and administration fees have been received. So as such, the Rams reason for refusal remains extant at this time, although the applicant has indicated a willingness to complete the agreement and make payment, but just wanted to point this out. So in summary, while officers acknowledge an unmet need for gypsy and traveller accommodation and afford this weight in the planning balance, it is considered that the harms identified as set out within the officer report and decision notice, particularly in relation to highway safety and landscape impact, significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Councillor Turner, would you like to go first or last? Okay, thank you. So we start with Colin Hunter, who's the arborist on behalf of the applicants, and you have a minute and a half, sir. I know it's short.
Mark's doing it all.
You're doing everything?
No, I'm starting now.
I do apologise. Okay, a minute and a half, and if you want to allow part of your time to go, it's entirely up to you. Share the 3 minutes, that's fine. Thank you.
Good morning. So this application is to provide homes for 12 gypsy traveller families, all of whom have connections to the local area, are from Norfolk, living in Norfolk, or have family in Norfolk. Most of them are living quite precarious and insecure lives. We had to keep the personal circumstances confidential because some of the families are living in places they're not meant to be and are worried about getting in trouble. They need permanent homes. There's a desperate shortage, as acknowledged in the officer report, of around 71 pitches in Breckland. This is a catastrophic policy failure. The council is not providing pitches. These people, you can't put them to anywhere they can go and have a safe pitch anywhere in Breckland. It's a catastrophic failure. The wider family and friends are a community in their own right. They are related to or friends of the applicant Lisa Jane, who's here today. Lisa Jane wants her family and friends around her in their own community, which is how gypsy traveller people live, in extended family groups. They cannot do that currently. These people with their children do not have that ability. I want to clarify that highways do not object saying that you cannot provide sightlines. We can provide sightlines within our land ownership. It results in some tree and hedge loss, but we can provide sightlines that are completely safe. Our highways appraisal by local transport projects, who are very experienced, concludes that it can be provided and it will be safe. The downside is a loss of trees, and Colin's going to talk about that.
There you go. The proposed removal of the trees in the hedgerow is acknowledged as a sensitive issue, and this decision has not been taken lightly. Unfortunately, due to highway safety requirements and the need to provide a safe principal access for residents, visitors, service vehicles, emergency vehicles, has been concluded that retaining the trees in the hedgerow while delivering a compliant and safe access route is not achievable. Furthermore, all of the ash trees are now affected by advanced ash dieback disease, with several specimens identified as being within stages 2 and 3 decline and some progressing into stage 4 ash dieback. As a result, the trees are experiencing significant structural deterioration and canopy loss. A further and overriding concern is the danger these trees now pose to their immediate proximity to the public highway and ongoing busy traffic movements. The potential for branch failure or structural instability presents an unacceptable risk to road users, pedestrians, residents and emergency services. While the loss of the trees in the hedgerow is regrettable, the wider proposal delivers a number of important long-term public and environment benefits. In addition, the proposal presents an opportunity for substantial ecological enhancement across the wider site. This includes planting of multiple semi-mature native trees, extensive native hedgerows, pollinator-friendly planting and wildlife habitats, and the installation of bat and bird boxes. Keep going, or? No, is that all right? You keep going, I don't mind, I'm rushing it there, I'm just going as fast as I can. So, collectively, right, these measures will create a broader and more diverse and better managed ecological environment than currently exists on the site. Importantly, right, wherever there's feasible material from the felled trees and the retained will be reused for the site environment and community benefit, including deadwood habitats, natural seating areas and other ecological enhancement features. The scheme will also transform current unmanaged areas into a well-maintained, environmentally enhanced landscape with long-term replacement planting and ongoing management commitments in place. In summary, although the loss of the ash trees, hedgerow and other existing vegetation is acknowledged and regretted, the proposal delivers a safe and compliant access arrangement, much needed homes for 12 families and significant long-term environment and biodiversity improvements, which when considered together weigh positively in the overall planning balance. Just try to get out there as quick as I could on it.
It's not easy, I promise you. And as much as you do that in front of a bathroom mirror with a stopwatch, it was actually 4 minutes. So I allowed it because I wanted to hear what you both had to say. Thank you. It's over to you then, please, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of the ward member for Tony, but also as ward representative for Shipdham, the adjoining ward, which is the closest settlement to this application. I agree with all the conclusions the officers have come to, especially in regard to highway safety, lack of sustainability and isolation from the wider community. There is no footpath, trod or even flat land to enable anyone to walk from the proposed site to Shipdham village, which is 2 kilometres away. This road, the A1075, has had at least 3 fatalities in the past years, plus numerous road traffic accidents. The proposed site is on a very straight stretch of road, which despite having a 50-mile-an-hour limit, is often exceeded by speeding traffic overtaking. There are also a series of sharp bends as you enter Shipdham or Ovington in the other direction, again, so not suitable for pedestrian access. All ingress or exit from the proposed site will only add to the possibility of further traffic incidents. There are no bus stops along this stretch of road. The primary academy in Shipdham is already oversubscribed for this year and next. Because of its good standing, it's in the top 10 in the Sunday Times, and reputation, there is already a considerable waiting list for children. The doctor's surgery in Shipdham is in a similar position. One of the key considerations in any planning application is the link to community. This proposed site would never physically or geographically be part of the local community, Shipdham in one direction, Tony, Ovington and Watton in the other. I would ask the committee to consider the following. The proposed site is outside the settlement boundary. It would be completely isolated from the nearest community. It is unsustainable in that any need, however small, half a pint of milk, would require the use of private transport. The A1075 road is highly dangerous and certainly not fit for any pedestrian use. That this application is contrary to HOU 08 and the PPTS and the relevant policies of the NPPF. With all these facts and the officer's recommendation for refusal, I ask the committee to follow that recommendation and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members, please. Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, hi. I've got the HOU 08 in front of me, and I can see its preference will be given to brownfield locations. Those can readily be serviced. This is already existing. What would it take to make that site suitable, really, by putting services in? Oops, there's stuff already there. There is a need for more provision. I can't see a problem with it.
Yeah, so the site is existing and the proposal is to extend that existing site. And as it's existing, there is a certain amount of provision already there, which you've heard from Mr. Simmons, clearly setting out that there is a desire to grow the site here so they can So there are family connections, and that, you know, it is a bigger site, and there is absolutely a district-wide need for gypsy and traveller sites. So none of that is in debate here, nor is the status of the application. The issue that we've set out in the officer report, which members you will need to make a decision on, is that the frontage hedgerow does contribute significantly to the character and appearance of the area. And that provides an element of screening as well, in terms of the privacy and amenity of the future occupants of that site, as well as in terms of the character of the area. Now, what the Highways Authority is saying is, due to the speed of the road and the vast extent of the visibility displays, the majority of that frontage hedgerow will need to be removed to allow for the visibility displays to be put in, and that would have a material impact on the character of the area. And therefore, what officers are saying to you, and it's completely within your remit to come to a different conclusion on this matter, is that the retention of that hedgerow contributes significantly to the character of the area. You cannot achieve a suitable access in terms of highway safety without its removal. I appreciate you've set out that there will be additional planting and screening put in its place. Officers have put more weight on the site's unsustainable location and the loss of that hedgerow, and the fact that suitable access can't be achieved without it. Obviously, members, you can put in a planning balance and put more weight on the need for gypsy and traveller pitches. That's completely within your remit to do so today. And also, you may feel that the character of that road can be recreated with the removal of that hedgerow, the visibility displays put in, and some new planting, as is suggested by the applicant behind it. So, members, your recommendation from officers is that there is overriding harm to the character of the area through the removal of that hedgerow, and that the highways requirements in terms of travel and speed cannot be achieved without it. And this is an unsustainable location, and therefore we have recommended this one for refusal for those reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Bowes, please.
Thank you. I tend to agree with Councillor Blackburn about what he's saying about this, and feel that I could support the application if the county highways visibility display requirements were met by the applicant. I'm always reluctant to see the loss of hedgerow, but it isn't strictly the character of that area, because further down the road as you go towards Ovington, there's quite open fields, quite, very close to the road. The other thing I want to ask is, for instance, the parish council have said there are multiple fatal RTAs over the last few years, but I'd like to know what the actual figures are since the road was reduced to 50 miles an hour.
Unfortunately, we don't have the figures since the reduction in road, the speed limit on that road has been set out, and what your officer report sets out is that the local parish councils have identified those incidents.
They're not, the figures aren't recorded in the report as far as I can see. It's easy to, no, I know, but it's easy for the parish council to make that statement, but without backing it up.
Yes, if you can fill that space in.
Thank you, sir. So our highways consultants, who are local transport projects of Beverley, they work for councils, for developers, they're very experienced. I contacted them before the meeting because obviously it is one of the key issues, and they confirmed that road casualty data is now available for the period up to 31/12/24 for the 12 months previous to that, and analysis of the latest data demonstrates no collisions have occurred within the vicinity of the site, and they consider it can provide a safe access. Thank you.
Can I ask, within that data, was 2024, was the speed limit reduced to 50 then? Yeah. It was? Okay, thank you. Just for clarification. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Taylor, or, oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah, it was you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, if the applicant is already in agreement to have some planting scheme in place, could that not then be conditioned so that there's an assurance that obviously it will take place to try and mitigate some of the loss if the highways improvements are made to make it safe?
Yeah, the proposed planting scheme is set out on the plans that have been submitted with the application, and yes, absolutely, that could be conditioned.
Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. There's no discussion of foul drainage issues, and it looks to me like the site would have quite some difficulty in providing septic tank and land drains to support that number of units.
Would you like to answer that?
We'd be happy to accept a condition to provide full drainage details, and whether it was a Clargester type system that would produce clean water into a soakaway. We've now got the space at the end, which is a green space with trees, and a discrete area for clean water runoff could be provided. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Samantha Taylor, please.
Thank you. Could we please go back to the photograph of the site as is with the mobile static homes that are in situ already? Sorry. So the application as is for 12. Those pictures seem to suggest that there is already at least 12, if not more there. So my questions are really two. One, if these are already habited, like if there's already families living in these homes. And two, if there is, have the traffic movements caused issues on the highway to this point? Because if they're already being lived in or used, then there's already traffic coming out onto that road. And then obviously the data from those movements should be considered.
Thank you. Just a very quick comment. So,
no, that weren't you.
Sure. So there are more units on the site. The units have pictures have been statics have been put on the site, but they're not being currently lived in at the moment.
Can I just come back then? So obviously in the report it states about them coming on and off and the hazard that could cause to the highway. They're already there, so that's already been mitigated. That's already been.
So yes, the some of the caravans and the static units are already on the site. Yeah, yeah. So yes, there is that larger vehicle movement. They're already on the site. Obviously, they are part of a travelling community, so they may leave and go on and off the site, and that's completely acceptable. I think the issue the Highways Authority have is the speed of the road and achieving the visibility displays when entering and exiting the site on a normal day. And we must remember this is an unsustainable location. So they will need to, anyone that's occupying the site will need to use vehicles to access any services and facilities. So the visibility space, the removal of the hedgerow is to create that 2.4 by 160 vis display so they can see left and right when entering and exiting the site for everyday use. That's not extended because of the size of the vehicles. That is the vis display for that road, given the speed of it.
Thank you. Councillor Attawell, please.
We haven't got a detailed planting scheme. All we've got is a plan showing the green areas of space. So no, the tree officer hasn't commented on the detail. Like I said earlier, that could be conditioned.
Yes, Councillor.
I would just ask the question for this committee really. Would we be happy with that condition, or would we prefer it if we deferred and there was more detail on board for us to finally consider it? I think there's the potential here to make this work. I'm just concerned that we don't have the detail to satisfy ourselves in terms of display, removing the hedge and the highway safety without having that detail. So I'm just wondering, yeah, it's up to the committee, sorry.
Yeah. So you're looking for a more secured up presentation to go ahead. Thank you. Councillor Smith-Taylor, please.
Yeah, just noting Councillor Attwell's comments about children. Obviously, we have a Gypsy and Traveller site just on the cusp of my own ward, and we have more issues not with the children getting out, but they're animals. And obviously, on a main stretch of road there, could we maybe condition that there's adequate fencing within that hedgerow to stop their dogs and stuff getting out on the road? Because I know we often have on our local community groups, there's a dog on the A11 and it's come from our local site. So obviously it's like protecting travellers on the road, like vehicle movements, but also their animals too.
Nodded. Yes, you can have a condition about fencing and planting. Obviously, you would need a seconder for a deferment, but just to be really, really clear, we've got a plan that shows the area of the planting to be in. You know, all you'd be asking for is the species. The visibility displays are set by the highways at 2.4 metres back when we've got the displays, so we know which areas the planting would be outside of. So it would just be a condition to approve the boundary treatment while the vegetation in itself matures over time. And therefore that would just be an agreement of species with the tree officer. We wouldn't actually get planting locations. We'd have the number of species within the plan that you've just seen in the green area. So I'm not sure what additional detail you're asking for the applicants to provide.
Councillor Attwell.
That's better. Yes, I hear all that. I think the key for me is taking on board the issue and comments about animals. That almost needs some, whether that's like rabbit fencing or something on the inside of the site. When you're removing that vegetation, there also needs to be account taken that probably needs to be close bordered fencing or something put up, because you're going to need some kind of screening for the site, for the residents of the site and the people outside the site, to provide proper screening until the green vegetation grows up. I, for one, would just like to see the detail of that as a committee member. It's up to everybody else whether they're happy to condition that for officers, or whether we as a committee would like to see that detail and bring it back. I'm sure that could be put together pretty quickly. I know what you're saying about various species and stuff of different plants that can be grown there, but I would just like to satisfy myself what is actually going to be put in place there. There's a safety reason and also the aesthetic reason until the vegetation grows up, and also just a comment from our tree officer. But you know, that'll be up to the committee to decide.
Now, normally my vice chairman would be here and he would tell you all about things that happen in Narborough. And I remember there was a site in Narborough, only a very small one, but they had formulated a pen system where if you were leaving in a vehicle, you opened a gate, drove into a penned area which had another gate, you shut the gate behind you before you opened the gate, drove out and then shut the gate. So that no children, no animals were out onto the road. And you've missed that because he wasn't here today, so I do apologise. Okay, any further comments from members? Councillor Banbridge.
Yes, Chairman. I've sat very quietly and listened to all the comments from the applicant and the ward member stand-in and our members. I mean, when I came along here, I was well aware, of course, of our shortage of sites for gypsies and travellers in Breckland. And also, I'm aware of the road and I'm aware of the dangers of the road, and I came along entirely believing that I would accept the officer's recommendation on this. But there have been considerable arguments about whether or not the access can be made safe. And I think because we are short of gypsy and traveller sites, if we as a committee can be made sure that it is safe, then I think this application should come back. But I think we as a committee do need to know exactly what is going to be put in place before me personally making that decision to change my considered vote.
Thank you. Rebecca?
So the Highways Authority are absolutely satisfied that a safe access can be achieved in here via condition with the necessary visibility displays. There will need to be a gate and a setback. Any gates will need to be set back within the site to allow a safe turning and entrance, and those can be covered by standard conditions that we add to any permission. What the downfall of that will be is that the frontage hedgerow will have to come out to safely achieve those safe access arrangements on and off that road. But it is possible, it has been shown on a plan that that can be done. And if members are satisfied that the loss of the hedgerow is acceptable and that with a replanting scheme that can be conditioned, obviously the tree officer has objected to the loss of that hedgerow. But equally, we can agree a replanting scheme for that location. So it's not a matter that the highway safety elements cannot be achieved in response to the Highways Authority comments. It's that they cannot be achieved without the loss of that entire frontage hedgerow.
Councillor Attwell.
Chairman, I appreciate what I'm about to say might be frustrating for the applicants, but to satisfy the committee, I'd like to propose a deferment. I would like this committee to see that finer detail. I think this can be made to work. I would appreciate and I would recommend and propose a deferment subject to receiving that information on the fencing, the aesthetics of the fencing until such time as the planting scheme can be put in place, and just make sure that our tree officer is happy with that proposed planting scheme. If that detail can be provided, I'm sure this could come back to committee fairly quickly. I'd propose that.
Thank you. Well, a deferment's been proposed. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Bowes. Okay, so for deferment on this item, PL 2025-0756, the hands please for a deferment. Seven, and those against? Okay. This item is deferred. You're fully aware of that. If you'd like to explain to people that, you know, there's a lot of thought gone into this with regards to the families and what have you. And the fact is the site, I think they all feel, from what I can gather, the site is acceptable, but the position is not, as is. Okay, thank you very much. This item's deferred. Thank you for attending. And well done, children, apart from the child that ran up and down the hallway in the middle of the thing. Next time, bring some slippers. Thank you. Okay, without further ado, as the room is clearing, we're going on to Dereham. PL 2025-0414 and also PL 2025-0448. And we have Tony Needham, who's the clerk of Dereham Town Council, and Councillor Alison Webb, who's the ward representative. Tony, I was at a meeting last night and they kept calling the clerk the clerk. Is it a new thing or have I missed something? I don't. No, it's the clerk, even though it's spelt clerk. Mayor and mayor, and calling me a chair. With settee, it'd be more. Yeah, nothing to do with sponsorship from DFS. Okay, That's it, Alison. I've said all my jokes. Can we move on? Thank you. Okay, over to you then, please, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Now, those that were present last committee in April, I do note, I think there's a couple that weren't, so I'm going to go through these items again. We've got 2 items here. Obviously, we discussed at length viability, so those 2 items were deferred to enable an explanation of viability and what the kind of the financial viability appraisals were saying here. So, yeah, before I go into that, I just need to reacquaint ourselves with the site and the application. So you'll see we've got 2 items. We've got an application to vary the permitted scheme through a Section 73 application, 0488 VR Madge. So that's accompanied by an application which would seek to amend the planning obligations accompanying that, the original consent. So we're in Dereham, Greensfield Road, and we can see by the red star there. As you'll see from the report, we do have a site with extant consent through outline and reserve matters permission for 48 units. So we can see the red edge here, and I'll touch on some of those aspects in a moment, but you'll see Greensfield Road here, the A47 here, and obviously we're sitting here at the moment. So Greens Road here, so a variety of business industrial units sit to the west of the site. Now the site has got an earthbund around this western boundary into the south, mature trees along this eastern boundary, residential properties to the north and east, and we can see further along Greensfield Road to the east, which I touched on last committee, was the Orbit Home site, which is continued past what we can see today, is nearly largely complete. So just how we sit, a bit more detail. So the residential sites, we've got the access which has been implemented just here, and it's kind of an irregular flat site, so access point here. And we can see those industrial areas here to the south, the A47, and those residential areas to the north are generally 2-storey detached properties, as you can see here. So as I said, it's a flat open site, but it does have earth bunds along these boundaries. You can make that out here in terms of providing existing acoustic attenuation to those uses, and the A47 adjoining the site. So just touching on that permission. So we've got a reserve matters permission that was granted in 2022. So that's for the 48 units. We've got, we've got the earth bund here, mature planting. We've got the drainage basin here, so some of the infrastructure here. We've got children's play area here, and then a footpath link that links onto Hall Lane to the south of the site, which crosses over that earth bund. As I say, there's a mixture of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed homes within that extant scheme, 2 stories in height. Now, within that consented scheme, there is 10 on-site affordable units. So we've got 4 2-storey, 3-bed semi-detached homes here, and we've got 1 and 2-bed apartments here, and there's 6 of those in this block at the bottom here. So obviously when that original application was granted back in 2019, that application was subject to a viability appraisal, and that established at that point that only 20% affordable housing could be provided on site, hence the 10 units. At that point, there was a policy requirement of 40% affordable units for those. Now that's 25% with our current plan. And then there was a clawback arrangement, as we do in all those schemes, where we don't quite meet the policy requirement to secure an overage where viability is reviewed at a later point in time. So I'll just quickly touch on those affordable units. So there's the 3-bed affordable units there. Now, within these applications before us, they're not seeking to amend those units in terms of their location, design, space, etc., but to remove those as affordable units. And just touching those apartments there. So there's the 1 and 2 bedroom units are accommodated in that. block on the southern corner. And other things to note, the application has been implemented via the access point here. So this is Greenfield Road, and that's the view into the site. And you see those trees, etc., and the residential units either side of that access. Now, in terms of some of the other, I've quickly gone through some of the history there. Now, there was a subsequent deed of variation as well in 2022 that brought the affordable housing in line with our current plan. As I mentioned, our current plan, policy House 7 requires 25% affordable provision. So the current extant consent requires, as I said, 20% on-site with a 5% off-site contribution. In terms of that runs through some of the history. Now, we sit here today with the two applications, as I outlined, submitted last year. Now, as I say, I'm going to trawl through some of the viability with you, but just to quickly summarise, the applications were submitted, as I say, last year with a viability appraisal, which our expert CP viability reviewed on our behalf. Now, the basis of the application from the applicants is that since consent was granted, that the market, the economy has substantially changed. There's rising costs in terms of construction, and there's those together with mortgage rates are impacting the sales and values. Now, they did submit a report from the House Building Federation just yesterday, which is a report that we understand is going to central government, highlighting some of these issues. Now, as I say, that is just a report by themselves going to central government. It is a generic report, but it does indicate that things like, particularly it looks at the period in the past 5 years where things like future home standards, additional taxes and levies, for instance, nutrient neutrality, BNG, landfill tax. It kind of looks at some of those, the changes in the building regulations, and it looks very generically at broad range. It only doesn't look at geographical areas, but it indicates that if all those are taken into account for a scheme like this, it adds £76,000 to construction costs. As I say, that is just submitted yesterday, and just kind of explains their kind of recent costs and the implications it's having on the industry. So irrespective of that, obviously, as I said, we've had our consultant review the appraisals. Now, if I kind of touch on some of the conclusions as I go through it, but as I said last week, our consultant has reviewed that. They don't necessarily agree with everything that the applicants and their consultant has put in their appraisal, but ultimately their view and conclusion is that the scheme as consented is no longer viable, and I'll go through that in more detail now. Obviously, just in terms of an explanation on viability, I guess just touching on the statement here and the approach to viability, it's as I say, it looks at whether a value generated by a development is more than the cost of constructing it. So it looks at those key elements in bold there. So development value, costs, which is one aspect I just mentioned, land value, landowner premium, and a appropriate developer return. So benchmark land value is an established way of assessing scheme viability. And that, as I said there in that slide, seeks to identify essentially a benchmark value for any site. And this is established, it's used across the country by all authorities and is reflected of the NPPG. So the approach, once you've identified a benchmark land value, is to then look at all those costs that any scheme comes under. We'll go through those in a minute. And then that, once you've taken account of that, an appropriate level of return for the developer, it works out residual land value. And we'll touch on that in a moment, but in simple terms, if the residual land value doesn't achieve the benchmark, which is what a willing developer would accept to bring forward a site, then it's considered to not be viable. So that's just a quick summary there. So just quickly looking at the benchmark land value, about how CP viability and the applicants have understood the benchmark land value and calculated it. The basics are you start at an existing use value, so that's set out here, and our viability consultant and the applicants agree in terms of what the base value there for the site would be, and that's based on their professional understanding, knowledge and experience of the local market. And then obviously that's 22,500 per hectare. You equate that to the whole site. It equates that existing use value. The other thing to then get you to a benchmark land value is a premium to the landowner. So that essentially then means a landowner's would secure an enhancement that would mean they would sell it and bring forward the land. Now, CP viability, I've identified through recent appeals and through their assessment and evidence base through as part of the emerging local plan, they've provided guidance in doing that. And these recent appeals and cases indicate that that premium can be between 10 and 15 times the first figure up there, the existing use value. Now, in this case, the applicants have proposed a figure and a multiplier of 11.5. Now, CP viability agree with that. In terms of the importance of that premium does impact and does take account of, I suppose, the risk of a site and complexity. So these premiums, they're not necessarily fixed. They'll vary per application scheme and site. So it's not a fixed value, but it's a judgment by those consultants and appraisers when they look at a scheme, depending on its site, its scale, the number of units, its location, its size, and the type of units, accommodation it's providing. Now, at 11.5, that reflects what CP viability have done through the emerging plan process when they looked at the viability of our local plan and housing. So that's in line with their evidence base and gathering as part of that. As I say, it's 11.5. For instance, if you have a site with greater costs, abnormal costs, infrastructure costs, then that tends to push down that figure. So, you'll see it. Some sites have been up to 15. So that just reflects some of the as I talk on some of the costs and the complexities of a scheme in this location. And then obviously the importance of a benchmark land value is then making sure that, for instance, the key things from a planning point of view, Section 106 obligations do reflect that benchmark land value. They're not then used to reduce and impact the scheme further on. That you've got a benchmark land value that should reflect what it costs from a planning point of view to get affordable housing infrastructure, etc. So it is taken account of at this point. So touched on some of the costs. So as I say, in terms of running through this viability appraisal, on the left there you've got the applicant's appraisal, what they consider as appropriate costs. On the right is ours, our CP viability. So you'll see some of those where CP viability don't agree that the base cost is so high. It's more than 500,000 below. That comes down to, you'll see that in the single garages, the double garages. Again, for air source heat pumps and Part L and F regs. They don't agree with the applicants. The costs are less than being submitted by the applicants. So it's important that obviously when reviewing these appraisals that we're going to take our own view. It's objective and it's based on their understanding. And we don't see elevated costs which can impact on the viability. So you'll see some of theirs where all of those, actually we disagree with some of the inputs that the applicants have said in all those there. So we'll look at all those costs. Other costs for finance. So again, you'll see the top one from a finance point of view. So financing loans, etc. We disagree with the amount there. We think 377 is excessive. So that's what's been put in our appraisal, 300,000. Sales and marketing, legal costs. Now, we agree in terms of those inputs. So all these, so there's a series of inputs here and result in an appraisal. And let's say there's agreement on some, we disagree on others. And those figures there in terms of the sales and marketing and legal costs do align with our evidence base for the emerging local plan as well. As you see, there's significant amount of costs, abnormal costs there, over 1.2 million. So again, our experts agree in that regard, and that's a bit more information about those, how those have been calculated. So in terms of where this site sits, to give you an idea about what our evidence base for the emerging local plan is, those costs for abnormals are significantly above what has been done by in assessing a emerging local plan for schemes of this size, and that obviously does impact a scheme coming forward, those level of costs. And obviously then we've got to look at values. So what are these houses going to create in terms of a value to a developer? So, and they, again, tried to highlight the applicant's views on the left and our views on the right in terms of the values. Now, you'll see highlighted in green are those that we agree with, in red are those we disagree with. And those, importantly from this scheme, are taken from the nearby extant permissions developments that are ongoing at the minute. The Orbit site I mentioned earlier on, that's obviously a very close site. It's on site, it's sold units in the recent time. It's similar in terms of location, etc. It's near the A47. So our view is that's a reasonable example to use. And one of the issues that our viability consultant has set out is that when he initially ran this appraisal last year without this market evidence, this evidence of sales values nearby, this actual understanding this has brought down the values on this site by approximately 1.7 million in terms of the total revenue. So that has changed significantly his view on this site in terms of he was looking at a site from his appraisal that could afford 10% affordable housing on site last year, all the planning obligations, to something based on the latest evidence, which is reasonable and justified, to something that now is no longer viable. And these are these values here. But as I said, we don't agree with the applicants entirely in their presumptions. Obviously, we feel that those units proposed those 3-bed detached units here, for instance, could secure a greater value, which would improve the viability. Similarly, in terms of the detached 4-bed units there, and that at the bottom gives you an overall value for the site from the two appraisals. Now, obviously, touching on another important aspect of viability is an acceptable developer's return. So that's what we touched on at the start in terms of what's undertaken, what's considered, the inputs and assumptions. And you'll see there at the top that profit is relatively established way of assessing financial viability in development. And guidance in the NPPG talks and sets out, well, for plan making purposes, profit should be between 15 and 20%. Now that's for the purpose of plan making. Now it's then, when we look at each scheme, what's an appropriate profit level for this scheme? That is a very broad range, 15 to 20, and it's then actually what's appropriate for a site. And CP Viability reviewed what's appropriate for this site, and they're comfortable that 17.5% on market units is appropriate. Now that sits within that range for the plan making purposes, and that is profit level reflects what was considered appropriate in 2019 when the outline was granted and viability was reviewed then. It also reflects our current local plan evidence base and what the emerging plan is saying in CP viability in terms of what viability on a scheme of this size, so 48 units up to 50, they consider 17.5% return to a developer on the market units is reasonable. And as I said, that's in line with what we've seen in Breckland over the past, but also in the county as well. So 17.5% is a relatively standard level of profit. So coming back to where, as I said at the start, where we're trying to understand, well, actually is a site viable? So what's the appropriate benchmark land value for a site? And then working all those costs, all those values through, you end up with a residual land value And if it's viable, then you achieve that benchmark land value with that residual amount once you've taken account of all the profit and the costs, etc. Here, both our viability consultant and applicants agree that that benchmark land value should sit at 642,500. So now, you'll see from where that residual land value sits, our viability consultant disagrees with the applicants. It's significantly better than theirs, but it's still below the benchmark land value. So that's why they're of the view the scheme, as we sit today, isn't viable. So that kind of hopefully summarises where they get to, what's taken into account. And as I say, that's a standard approach that, as I say, that authorities across the country is set out in the NPPG, guidance via RICS for the appraisers for viability, and that's where they've kind of work within that realm and the guidance. So now, as I say, we don't necessarily agree entirely with the applicants in how they've appraised it and the assumptions and inputs they've used, but our conclusions, as I talked through last week and at the moment, where we sit today is that the scheme is no longer viable. So the applicants, as I say, summary here really, the application and scheme, as I said, is extant, it's implemented, and it's now over 5 years old since those legal obligations were entered into, and the applicants are able to submit an application to vary that under section 106A, and we have to consider that and determine it. We'll see, otherwise it's appealed. Similarly with the section 73 application to vary the scheme to move those affordable housing units, we have to consider that in line with the evidence and the policies where we sit today. You'll see the applicants are actually recommending, offering 30,000 contribution, and we're recommending, as set out in the report, that's prioritised towards affordable housing off-site. And you'll see that it's no longer able to provide contributions towards education and libraries. Now, as I said, officers' recommendation would be that that 30,000 is prioritised towards affordable housing, but as always, we'd secure an overage clause within that viability is reviewed, and if they achieve that 17.5%, anything over, then we would claw back monies, and that, again, that would be prioritised towards affordable housing, education and libraries. So that's the recommendation before you. In terms of where we sit, in terms of the policies, our key one for obviously affordable housing is House 7, and that does allow for instances like this where through evidence-based viability appraisals, which have been scrutinised by our consultants, where they demonstrate a scheme isn't viable, then we can secure those a varied scheme, and that does need to secure that overage claw back within it. So the proposals, as proposed to be varied, would, and set out in the report, would accord with policy House 7, in the broader kind of planning policies and approach within our local plan about delivering full housing within sustainable locations. We also have to have regard to the social and economic benefits of delivering housing. Now, this would enable a scheme to come forward that has stalled. There's the contribution it would make to our housing land supply, which is deficient, but also local authorities are now forced and faced with a delivery test for housing, as you know. So, it would meet the requirements and assist the LPA in that regard. Now, I mean, we've obviously talked through last week about some of the concerns raised locally. I mean, those are set out in the report, and as I say, hopefully I've addressed some of those within the presentation. As I said, they're in the report. Happy to answer questions on that in terms of some of those concerns, because I know the town councillor here again. But I hope that's kind of summarised where we've got to from a viability point of view. Thank you, Chairman. Oh, apologies. So just to clarify, both applications, items 8A and B, are recommended for approval, subject to those changes as set out in the report. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Webb, would you like to go first or last?
I'd like to go last, please, Chairman.
Okay, it's your time. Mr Needham, please, Clerk of Dereham Town Council.
Thank you, Chairman. I think if this site isn't viable, it's a lovely flat greenfield site with access to the highway. If this isn't viable, then there's no development in Breckland that's viable. You know, and the question, what I always ask is, well, if Orbit can make a profit, why can't this development make a profit? Anyway, one of the issues that I haven't had an answer to yet, which I'd be happy to receive, is, you know, one of the questions is, well, why are you considering this application? As far as I can see, NPPF 59 clearly says that viability assessments should be made at the application stage. We're not at the application stage, we're way gone. Perhaps somebody can explain that later on. The Town Council is outraged at this application to remove affordable housing. And from the way this committee voted last time, you're also outraged at this application. However, you're struggling to find a policy reason at that time, and maybe that NPPF 59 is the policy reason, that the viability assessment should be made at the time of the application. Agreeing to this application may well be the pragmatic route. We get some homes built, easy, get it off our desks, move on to the next thing. If the easy route was always the right route, then we wouldn't really need elected members. You know, us as officers can make a pragmatic decision based on the evidence, and we can move ahead. While elected members must always consider the officer's advice, there is no obligation to follow that advice. Elected members need to consider the long term rather than the short term. And I think with this application, if you agree to this application, you're going to have a queue of developers at your door saying viability, 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 and you're not going to get affordable housing. I don't need to remind this committee that sometimes members need to do the right thing rather than the pragmatic thing. And I think doing the right thing for the communities on this occasion is to retain that affordable housing element and then see what happens. You know, don't make it easy for the developer. And I'd urge you to do the right thing. Vote against this application. And this isn't the first viability assessment that's come forward. This is the second one. At the last one, they removed the off-site sports provision, which is something the town council is particularly keen on. And at the time, they said they couldn't deliver the off-site sports provision. If they did, it would make the affordable housing unviable. So they took that out, and now they've come back again, second go, we're now taking the affordable housing. And I tried liaising with, because when this came to outline or reserve matters, I can't remember, this committee urged the applicant to work with the town council to look at the off-site sports provision. And I tried to engage. We had a number of meetings, and this was post-COVID. It was all kind of Zoom. And every time I put a project forward for off-site sport, they go, no, not interested in that. Every time. Right from the start, they've been nibbling away at their obligations, and this is just the last one. And actually, there are no obligations left, you know, the £30,000. You know, I would urge you to vote against this and stick up for local communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Webb, please.
Thank you. Okay, so again, we're here, and where's the agent? He's missing yet again. How much do they care about this application? How much do they care about our communities? They don't. I can tell you, taking these affordable houses out is completely wrong. It's setting a precedent, as Tony has said, to other applications coming forward. You're opening the floodgates if you do this. They're talking about their viability, and they're saying, oh, we're only going to get 17.5%. Well, the minimum, they could actually take less. They could take 15% of their viability for their profits. Why don't they take their profits down and give us our affordable houses? I'm sorry, I'm really cross about this, because at the end of the day, we've talked about it. Yes, it really matters, because we need affordable houses to give our people who are having a problem finding a house, somewhere to live in our areas, homes. We talked about the prices. The prices, they're saying, they've gone down. Well, I'm sorry, in 2019, when this was first approved, house prices on average, according to the government, were £253,865 for a house in Dereham. And now it's £257,000. So please don't tell me it's because house prices have gone down since 2019. That is just not true. It's just that they want more profit. It's as simple as that. We've talked about profit levels. How come Orbit, Tabler Wimpey, Hopkins Homes, they've all given us Dereham affordable houses? Why can't this developer? It's absolutely wrong, and I'm sorry, for the end of the day, it is a really wrong thing to talk about. I think last time I talked about our community desperately needing the affordable homes. We've got children who are being priced out of the local market, having to move away if they want to buy a house of their own. What's wrong with helping them and putting people over the profit of developers? And that's all I've really got to say about it. So I ask you really to think carefully about this before making your decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, it's open to questions from members. Councillor Gilbert, Councillor Bambridge, and then Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chair, man. £30,000 to be given to off-site affordable housing. It's a drop in the ocean, isn't it? You know, where would this, how does this work? Do they give it to another developer to help them? I mean, it sounds very good. You contribute to a site elsewhere. How does it work, please?
The contribution would be made to the council, and the council would use that money towards affordable housing projects.
Thank you. Councillor Bambridge, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not, I think, well known for entirely supporting Dereham Town Clerk when he comes to this committee. But on this occasion, I have to say that I do. And I have written down here before Councillor Webb said it, where is the applicant? I think this committee made it clear last time that we would like to hear from the applicant. What we've actually heard is an excellent presentation on why this thing can't make a profit from officers, and I don't think that's satisfactory to us. Why should Breckland tailor its policy on affordable housing? It's already done so twice. Why should it again tailor its policy on Section 106 and affordable housing to the whims of an applicant who doesn't respect us enough to even attend the committee? I think it's quite awful. I think it is up to the applicant to make the site viable. It's not up to us to give them back sufficient houses to make the site viable. I'm sorry, I do agree with the town council, town councillor, and with the town clerk that this application should be refused.
Thank you. Well, there wasn't a question in that, and I will remind you this is not a court of law, and the applicant cannot be subpoenaed to appear in front of the jurors. I understand where you're coming from, and I understand your frustration. Okay, Councillor Kybird, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's been very useful to have the detailed viability assessment to see the arguments on both sides. And being a builder myself, I wouldn't disagree with a lot of what's in there. There is one area of 294,000 for enhanced foundations. Now, that's equivalent of £5,000 per house. That's the equivalent of 32 cubic metres of concrete extra per house. So in terms of clawback and monitoring, I would certainly wish the council to make sure that that enhanced foundation item is fully accounted for, and if it doesn't cost that, that should come back as affordable housing.
Thank you. Councillor Attwell, please.
Yeah, a few comments, if I may, Chairman. Question for the officer. So when the viability assessment was done last time, and the committee decided to agree to the reduced affordable housing. What was the determined profit for the site? What was the developer going to receive in profit for that figure? And what is the anticipated figure for the profit now? So can I just have an answer to that first? Because I'd like to see how much that's reduced by.
It's the same, 17.5%, 17.5%. Chris covered that in his presentation. So the percentage allowed was the same. It's the on costs, so the cost of the building it, that have gone up, which has prevented the delivery of the affordable homes.
So can we just get into the weeds of why there's the additional build cost? What has happened since the last viability assessment? What has happened in terms of this? Have the site conditions changed? Have they suddenly found a massive gas main that they've got to divert? What has happened? What is materially different in the build cost then to now? Because I'm trying to understand if there was something that they hadn't envisaged that they've found. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, and I think that's partly why the applicants had sent this broader House Building Federation document yesterday, dated May 2026, to set out some of those issues the wider industry is facing about costs. And yeah, it's that cost hasn't necessarily reflected in prices for sales value. So they're not getting, from a value sales point of view, that increase that costs has changed in that period. So, you know, our viability consultant does have regard to latest trends, etc. But, you know, he has acknowledged that, for instance, those build costs have gone up. Materials, labour, they've all gone up. Things like he is aware of changes in the wider economy. So impacts from foreign policy, the economy more generally, impacts of pandemics and COVID, all those types of things. And key to his, obviously, appraisal was actually these values. So that's where these recent values that the Orbit scheme have actually evidenced has substantially reduced what he envisaged was being secured and was appropriate in Dereham in this location. That's overall that came down approximately 1.7 million. So that was one of the significant issues. So it's a combination of all those really, and that's I think where some of the points are made in terms of this House Builders Federation. There's things like, in the last 5 years, there's things like nutrient neutrality, BNG, there's future home standards changes, say in part L and F of the building regs. So there's all those that are impacting that.
So in 2022, they basically, approval was given to build the site, and they've basically sat on it for 3 years. And then why have they decided to sit on the site for 3 years and not get on with it? So that's one thing. No, that's a legitimate question. And also, when we come back to the profits, I hear you're 17.5%, but just for the record, can you tell me what that equates to in monetary value? I'd like for the record of this committee to know what the anticipated profit is that this developer anticipated he was going to make in 2022 and what he anticipates that he's going to make now. I would like that to be a matter of public record. The other thing that I think for me is key in terms of the original application was this application determined, was one of the key factors in determining this application that it was going to provide, and the reason, one of the driving factors for approval, that this application was going to provide the affordable housing. Because if that was a key driver in providing, in the application originally being approved, and we're now taking that away, to me, that is a significant material consideration.
Can I bring this back to what you're actually considering? So you've got a planning, hold on, you've got a planning application. So section 106A of the Town and Country Planning Act allows applicants and developers to vary Section 106 agreements where they are more than 5 years old. And Section 106A of the Town and Country Planning Act allows you to make an application to the local authority to vary that agreement. When you've got a planning application, your starting point is the development plan. So it's a new application. You've got a Section 73 application. It's not a consideration of the previous application. You've got an accompanying Section 106 agreements, Section 73 application. So you're making a new decision on this planning application, member. Any appeal inspectors will approach this application in the same way. So you are in effect making a new decision on an application. Through that new decision, your starting point is the development plan. And in this instance, given it is a reduction in affordable homes, the starting point is policy House 7 of your development plan. And policy House 7 clearly sets out that where they're unable to meet the 25% affordable homes, so you've got a new permission, a new consideration, they're unable to meet the 25%, so the original application isn't relevant because you're granting a new permission, the applicant will be required to submit an open book viability assessment where schemes do not meet the above policy requirements. So the applicant is openly accepting they don't meet the policy of 25%, and we are granting a new decision. So the existing decision isn't relevant to a Section 73 application pursuant to you making a new decision in accordance with the development plan. And in such cases, the council will commission an independent review of the viability statement for which the applicant will bear the costs. In those instances, those matters have occurred. We have a viability assessment. It has been assessed by an independent appraiser. That independent appraiser's advice has told you that the viability assessment is robust. Therefore, the debate around what they would have done in 2022 is irrelevant to the circumstances of this application because it's a new decision on a new planning application. Now, obviously, what you can't debate is the viability of the appraisal because your own independent appraiser that represents the council that we have commissioned to do that has told you that the development is not viable for this amount of houses. Therefore, you can look at the development as a whole and reach an alternative decision, but you need to look at your other material considerations, not starting with the development plan, which is policy House 7, which does allow for viability appraisals to discount the amount of contributions that are submitted with an application. So that is your starting point. You can consider other material considerations.
So what you're saying is that we're not just considering the viability, we're here today to consider the whole application again. Because if that's the case, I'd like a much more enhanced presentation, please. Because that's what you've basically just said. You've just basically said that this is an entirely new application. The old application sits where it sits and they can get on and build that with the affordable housing if they choose. But if we decide that that application is not acceptable to us in the round for whatever reason, therefore we need to be considering the whole application. But I'm sorry, Becky, I do come back and I really do want to know the answer at that. And if this should be in the public domain, forgive me if I haven't found it, in 2022, when they did a viability assessment, they would have said, we expect to make X amount of profit on this development. So I want to know what that figure is, and I want to know with this viability assessment, what anticipated profit this developer is going to make now. I think that's a public interest test, to be honest, because the people of Dereham and frankly, the wider Breckland are sick and tired of these developers come back. They can't even be bothered to turn up at committee to make the case themselves. And we're sitting here trying to determine this. And I think from a public interest point of view, they would like to know the answer to those questions, please.
We've got the answer to what the profit is in monetary terms on the new viability appraisal. Right. We can answer that question here today. What I would question is the relevance to the old viability appraisal, because that's not what you're considering here today. And this is a planning committee, and I get that people are angry about this situation. I get that it's an emotional topic, and none of us want to be losing affordable homes, including your officers. But what I've got to bring you back to is material planning considerations. That is my role in this planning committee is to tell you what your material planning considerations and what aren't your material planning considerations. So we have got the information available to tell you the profit margin, but the relevant material planning consideration to this application is that your independent consultant has told you that this development is not viable, and therefore you cannot, you have to take that advice into consideration, and any inspector will take that advice into consideration.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just going to take another, councillor, but before we go on, could I just, maybe it's me being completely off-piste with this one, but our independent consultant on your presentation, Chris, it said evidence-based, and they were on the ones where their figures were wrong to ours. So can I ask, what are they using as a gauge? If our independent consultant says evidence-based, obviously done his homework, and their figures are completely different.
In terms of, I can just show an example.
Yeah.
Come back to, sorry, Nigel. Come back to Roger Atterall's question about the value. So it's in the presentation there. It's so where we sit today, there's that profit at the top level here. Now, 17.5% based on the applicant's value of the site. So that's all units. The 17.5% would be 2,626,221 pounds. And again, CP Viability's view, based on the values overall, is that figure there. As I say, what we don't, without finding the 2020, it'd be 2019 when the viability was appraised last, 2019. So we haven't got that available to hand. In terms of Nigel's question about the differences, well, I suppose, again, it depends on what the input and assumption is and what they've used. Now, all viability appraisers are governed by the RICS guidance on financial viability, and that sets out what you should consider. Yeah, you should look at latest evidence, things like that. Market data, that can be used if reasonable. For example, what we have here is discrepancies in the red about what units they feel are appropriate from a value point of view, what size that, for instance, the 3-bed unit at 1,102 square metres, what that could achieve in market. Now, David's view, our viability consultant, is their indication based on Orbit didn't really reflect the size of that unit. He felt that actually a unit of that size, based on the Orbit values they were got from their sales, could actually achieve 345,000 for that property. And that's a professional view from viability appraisers as to that data. They've used the same evidence base, the recent market sales values on the nearby site, but they've come to professional judgment about what size unit. Obviously, they will be looking at market sales, the market conditions in an area frequently as part of their job, and our viability consultant, so that's an indication, and then they'll be aware of their own appraisals, factors locally. As I said, CP Viability have done a lot of work for the emerging local plan, so we'll know some of the local aspects to this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blackburn, please.
Yeah, I think you may have answered it here, but I was wondering, the viability assessment, there's a bit in here about the land values. Why is the land value slightly above the medium? Why is the land value not based on the use of the land immediately before? Is that relevant now, or have we moved way beyond that? Because you said we're looking at the application as it is today, not the assessment report and how that figures were arrived at. Because I don't like the figures the way they were arrived at, by the way.
Yeah, no, it is relevant. One of the first slides I talked about was actually how you work out that benchmark land value. Now, to get to that, you need to understand the existing use value, and both those appraisers have looked at what's an appropriate value for the existing use of the site. So it is relevant in terms of the coming to the benchmark land value, but the key thing was there that both appraisers, in regard to their professional judgment, are in agreement in terms of what that figure should be for that site at present.
Thank you.
Councillor Blackman's got a follow-up, sorry.
Just,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that one. In that case, based on the land use at the time, it looks like the developer used a much higher land value than it was actually valued at the time. So that would really change the figures, wouldn't it?
Sorry. Yeah, you're correct. That would change, and that's why particularly we have an external consultant to robustly go through that detail in terms of using their judgment to make sure that those types of figures, because that would have a significant impact. Now, as I said, the appraisers are both in agreement here, and I think the figures you talk about were some of the concerns raised by the town council about. Now, the figures our consultant is saying that the town council found were general figures used by government in policy making. Now, what the appraisers do is have regard to what's actually been achieved in that local area for market transactions. So they will then come to their own view on that. And David has looked at, as I said, he's looked not only at this site, but obviously the broader Breckland evidence base for the local plan and viability and what's appropriate. And, you know, having looked at his evidence base for that, these values are, and that's why he's agreed with them, do accord with those general figures that he's seen more broadly in Breckland.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you. I apologise if this has already been addressed, but sometimes, like, the further you go round, the more muddy the water becomes. So I just want to be clear. So what we're saying is that this application should be considered as a new application. Now, on that basis, would it be right or wrong to say, if this is a new application and members don't feel that that application is right, that they're not content with what the application is saying in terms of the affordable housing, we could refuse the application and then they can either not build it because it's not viable, or submit a revised brand spanking new application that then is viable but could potentially meet community needs. Would that be right?
Yes, in principle, but so let me explain the Section 73 application. So when you grant a Section 73 application, members, although it's titled a variation of condition application, you're granting a new permission. So you're granting a new decision on an application. So it creates its own permission. It doesn't sit alongside the old permission, it creates a new permission. So apologies if I didn't explain that very well. However, the existing permission is a material planning consideration. So the aspects within that permission must be taken into consideration in the determination of the application. The number of houses, their design, their layout, you know, the open space. They're all material planning considerations, and they contain significant weight in the decision-making process because they already have consent to build those. So a Section 73 creates a new permission, but you have to take into consideration the old permission because it has planning consent and therefore it could be built out. In terms of the Section 106A, which allows you to vary a Section 106 agreement, you can then make an application. So in the terms of paragraph 59, you're making an application. The regulations, the Town and Country Planning application says you make an application to change the Section 106 agreement. So you are allowed to consider viability under paragraph 59, as well as paragraph how 07 of the local plan. Now, going back to your question, whether we can refuse this, of course you can refuse this, members. Of course you can. And they could submit a new planning application. Of course they could. But it's not going to become viable because the same financial constraints are going to be there with the same number of houses. And when we talk about the other developments in Dereham, they are much larger. They've got got larger economies of scale. They were done a lot longer ago. They're not facing the same labour and build costs. So there is a change in circumstances in the general build market. It's not good. It's not something we want to be supporting. But my role is to tell you how you determine a planning application, and therefore your starting point with any new application will be back to how 7 And House 7 does allow them to submit a viability appraisal to demonstrate that a development isn't viable. And that is exactly what they've done in this Section 73 application and the Section 106A. That doesn't prevent you from taking into consideration other material considerations. But in terms of Policy House 7, it is very clear cut that it does allow you to make a viability appraisal and demonstrate that it's not viable to provide affordable homes, which is what they've done with these two applications.
Councillor Blackburn, please. Oh, we've done. Right, Councillor Atwell, please.
So, based on what you've just said, Becky, assuming that we'd never seen this application before, we could, let's assume this is a new application, a material consideration for us could be that we don't think this is best use of the site at this moment in time with that number of houses, that we would expect an applicant to come back with an application that was more viable. That might be that they've got to build less, or they've got to build different shapes, different types of dwellings on there to make the site viable.
Yes, but your other material consideration is you've got an extant consent that will be built out, which has significant weight in the planning balance process. So what you're effectively saying is we've granted planning permission for that, but now it doesn't look okay in this current climate. So you can't do that, can you? You have to give significant weight to the original permission, the layout, the buildings, the design, where they're positioned. So yes, you can say that the current development is unacceptable, but equally, members, you will need to say why it is unacceptable. And given that there's been no change in policy position since 2022 in terms of the local plan, what is your other material consideration? What has changed since the granting of that 2022 consent that you would now refuse planning permission, other than the lack of affordable homes?
Councillor Atwell, please.
Chairman, I would like our council solicitor to comment on this, please, because for me, a material consideration would definitely have been, when this application was considered originally, if that came to us and they just straight out said, we're not going to provide any affordable housing, we would have just said no. I'm confident this committee would have turned around and said no. So on the basis that there is no affordable housing now, is that a material consideration? And I really think we're at the point where we'd like some advice from our legal eagle to help us out here.
You asked for it. Off you go, Mr. Hall.
Understand your logic, but unfortunately you're deciding this now. And it is compliant now without the affordable housing. So I understand all the motivations and irritations, anger and frustration, but I have not heard a legal justification yet for refusing this application. Unless you can go through those figures and demur from the expert advice that we have, I see no legal justification for a refusal of this application. And it behoves me to tell you that. What you do is your prerogative.
Councillor Blackburn, please.
I hope I read that they are removing the open space provision. Am I incorrect in that? It's now off-site. So is that not a, should there not be open site provision for amenity use on that site for the number of houses, and it's not going to be there anymore?
Can you, yeah, you're no, they're not removing on-site. That's still being provided. So there's, showed one of the slides showed where the children's play area was. So they're still on-site.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Kybird. Oh,
we keep being asked what's changed since 2020. Construction material prices are now 38% higher than 2020. That's way ahead of consumer price inflation, and that does affect viability.
yeah, just no. Councillor Bambridge, please.
Can I just ask the lawyer, please? Surely our council policy is a relevant objection to this. And our council policy was 40% affordable when it was built. I opposed that, if you recall, in full council. And we've reduced it to 25, which is something I think is reasonable and is in line with most other districts in the area of the country that we live. And if that is a material consideration, which I believe it should be, then we can refuse this application, be it new or not new, because it doesn't comply with our policy.
Yes, it absolutely is a relevant planning consideration, but it's not viable. And that's what the figures show. So accordingly, we cannot require those numbers.
I'm sorry, but I have to come back on that. The reason it's not viable is nothing to do with this council. It is to do with the developer. The developer has seen fit to put in an application which is not viable. Then the developer should be required to put in a viable application. Viability is not our planner's problem. It's not our committee's problem or our council's problem. It is the problem of the applicant, and therefore the applicant should be dealing with it.
I understand the logic, but unfortunately, it's not legally justifiable. I understand the logic. I understand what you consider to be the moral of it. I understand what you think is right and wrong, but so far I haven't heard any legal justification, unfortunately, for refusing this. But as I say, that is for you to vote on.
Okay, well, I think we've really exhausted that, and I think we need a comfort break. So with that, I'm going to put this to the vote, if you don't mind, on both subjects. PL 2025-0414. Your officer's recommendation is approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? And those against? Right, okay. Oh, we lost Councillor Blackburn. Sorry, can I take that again? I do apologise, remember, I saw him walk out and then I completely forgot he'd gone. Sorry. Sorry, can I take that again? What we're voting on is, we've got two matters, we're taking two votes. So on this one for PL 2025-0414, that's the DPO one, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands for approval, please? And those against? Right, okay. And if I can just take the other one, which is PL 2025-0448, which is the variation. Your officer's recommendation, again, is one for approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? And those against? And did you vote? Or, oh, you voted, sorry, I didn't sort of flash in the pan. Okay, 4 to 6. Yeah, yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, unfortunately. Could I have your reasons for wishing to go against the officer's recommendation, Councillor Attwell?
I'm going to have a stab at this, and Mike Horn's going to hate me for it. But I believe that we should refuse this application on the basis, I think a material consideration is the application was approved originally on the basis that a certain level of affordable housing was going to be provided. That was the expectation of this committee, and that was definitely a material consideration, as was the provision of the off-site open space provision. We've now got to the point where we're paring this down to the bare minimum. I think that's a consideration. Whether that's a legal consideration, I'll let the lawyers sort that out. But I personally, sitting here as a committee member, I believe that that was a consideration at the time, and we should stand by that. We would not have approved this application, in my view, if there was no affordable housing on that site. And I have to say, whatever we decide here, I still want to know what that profit figure was from the original viability, because I think that's an important for us to understand. But I would put that as a material consideration. No affordable housing, we wouldn't have approved the application in the first place.
That's fine. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gilbert, I'll accept. Oh, sorry, people talking. From the floor, you are asking that we refuse this item. So could I have show of hands? I'm taking them both together this time. Show of hands for refusal, please. This is the refusal. And those against? Why has it gone the other way? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why has it gone the other way? 4, 5. The officer's recommendation was approval. Now we're asking for.
I proposed a reason for refusal.
Right. Yeah, so we're voting for the reason of refusal. Those in agreement with refusing this application. 2, 3, 4. Okay, and those against that recommendation and would like to see it approved. 4. I didn't realise I'd said that funny. I thought that was clear. Mr. Horn, please. Sorry.
I have absolutely nothing to add. I think that is your reason. That's what's been discussed here. It therefore is a reason that has integrity because that's what you've discussed. I've already given you my legal opinion on that, but that is what you feel. So be it.
Can I just say, I value the solicitor's advice. I heard that, I understood it, but I do think that come what may, on this occasion, with the lack of engagement from this applicant and this just constant drip of descending to the lowest common denominator, this council should make a stand, and that's what we voted on. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I always say, it's always very, very difficult for any elected member to vote against affordable housing or social housing. And it's a little bit, again, I like to say the old one, but it's a little bit like turkeys voting for Christmas. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry?
Yeah, no, I need a wee. I've got to have a wee. Yes,
Yeah, can we?
Roger needs a wee as well.
Live streaming and restart.
Well, I'll sing while they go and have a wee if you want.
Oh, your microphone's on, by the way.
Okay, put up the banner. Okay, I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to have five minutes. A couple of people want to go to the lavatory and a couple of people just want to grab some sort of liquid. And then we will continue with our last application today, which is at Thetford. Okay, so we're literally going to be about 5 minutes. If it's midday and I haven't started, you are entitled to start throwing chairs. Okay, while we just wait for the members to come back, you can keep it off at the moment, Julie. I'm just, speakers I've got on this, Paul Brooker, got you. Paulo Mirles, I know that one said right. Yeah, that's near enough, that's near enough. Andrea Long, yes. Oh, you've seen you before, Andrea. Yes, of course. The agent, and Councillor Michael Westman. Lovely, who's the ward representative? Okay, good, just want to check. How are we doing for members? Oh yeah, Councillor, oh no. Okay, let's continue, ladies and gentlemen. We are now on item 9B, PL 2026-0064 at Thetford. We have our various people in place, and we're going to hand over to Ed. Take it away, Ed.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, I should say now. So the application, so this is a full planning application which seeks the material change of use of an existing residential dwelling at 34 Old Croxton Road to a children's daycare nursery, as well as a subsequent change of use of the existing children's nursery at 36 Old Croxton Road to a residential dwelling. And the application's been referred to Planning Committee by the Director of Planning and Building Control following a call-in request from the local ward representative. So this is a location plan, so it's located on the eastern side of Old Croxton Road here. So you can see that 36 is the southern end of a semi-detached dwelling, which is obviously adjoining to 38. And you obviously got 34 here, which is a detached property here. You can see there's sort of row of terracing on the western side. And then then there's a row of semi-detached housing on the eastern side, as well as further detached dwellings along Wheatakers Road to the east. So this is a site in relation to the settlement boundary. So you can see here it's firmly within the settlement boundary of Thetford, which is considered to be a sustainable location in accordance with our development plan policies. So the site in the wider context, you can see again, this is the aerial view of the site, where you can see it's quite tightly packed with all the parking on either side of the road. And again, you can see over here the railway bridge to the north, as well as the ambulance station to the south. So yeah, you can see it's a very tightly packed residential area. So this is a proposed site plan. You can see here that there is on-site parking of up to 4 spaces, as well as a drop-off area fronted onto the road. Obviously, you can see that a lot of this is going to be located on 34, and you can sort of just about see the northern boundary separation between 34 and 36, which demarks a nursery area, outdoor play area in 34, as well as the residential garden for 36, which is going to be subdivided by a 1.8 metre high timber post panel fence. And then the existing outbuilding here is going to be retained as a staff room, storage and nursery area. So you can see the existing floor plans for 36. So there are 5 nursery rooms on this overall, with 3 on the ground floor and then 2 on the first floor, as well as a kitchen area and an office. So it's important to note that there are no sort of external material changes, which will be very clear within the elevation plans. But you can see that the change of use for 36 is going to become a 3-bedroom dwelling with 3 bedrooms at first floor. And obviously the internal layout is largely remaining as previous before. So again, the elevations are going to be remaining as existing. with only internal alterations proposed. So this is the existing floor plan to 34, which is going to be converted into the nursery. So you can see it's a larger property with 5 bedrooms at first floor, as well as quite a large open plan living area and dining area. And you can see there's going to be some more internal alterations at first floor with these 5 bedrooms being been internally altered to result in 2 large children rooms as well as a children's sleeping area, as in addition to the open plan sort of lounge area also going to be used as a children's play area as well. But again, it's important to emphasise there's no external changes to the dwelling, and on this basis, we consider it to be acceptable in design terms. So these are some site photos, and this is taken from, this is 34 Old Croxton Road with the sort of existing driveway there, which is going to be used as the on-site parking for visitors and staff. And this is taken looking southwards, so you can see either side on the road. It's tightly knit with both cars parked either side. And this is also looking northwards. You can see the sort of gradual incline as well, with 36 Old Croxton Road here. And then this is 36 Old Croxton Road, where you can see it's that semi-detached property. And this is just some more photos of that property. And this is internal photo, which has been supplied within the supporting statement provided by the applicant. So you can see the existing provision is obviously quite open plan with all these sort of additional sort of areas that children can play. So I'll just show these photos. This is the external area at the rear. And then there's another photo. And again, there's some more photos of the street. This is taken during around sort of 9:15, work during the drop-off and pick-up area. You can see again this very tightly packed street, and this is the driveway as well. And then finally, this is a highways dimension plan, which has also been submitted by the Highways Authority to demonstrate that these need to comply with on-site highways regulations, parking regulations. So as touched upon already, the application seeks material change of use of a residential dwelling to a children's daycare nursery, which is use class EF at 34 Old Croxton Road, as well as the subsequent material change of use of the existing children's daytime nursery to a C3 residential dwelling. And again, most of these works are internal. And the operator, it's proposed to use the operating hours that are used currently, which are between 7:30 to 6, Monday to Friday, as well as enforce the existing staggered pick-up and drop-off times. And obviously, it's important to emphasise that as a result of the increased building from 3-bedroom dwelling to a 5-bedroom dwelling, there is going to be an increase in numbers of children on site from 24 to 40, as well as there's going to be an additional 3 full-time staff members on site, taking it from 7 to 10. So obviously we need to give material weight in the overall planning balance to paragraph 100 of the NPPF, which emphasises the importance of a sufficient choice of early years spaces to meet the needs of the existing and new communities. And obviously we give weight to the benefits of that with the additional 16 children, providing additional nursery spaces with the obviously significant extension of Thetford's in terms of housing. So obviously weight is given in that balance and act, as well as weight in relation to policy ECO4 of a Breckland local plan, which obviously has a benefit of additional jobs generation through the increased staff members. However, obviously we need to, as we'll discuss more thoroughly in a minute, there are significant amenity and highways parking concerns which ultimately outweigh the limited benefits in the overall planning balance. So paragraph 198 of the NPPF requires planning decisions to ensure that all development is appropriate for its location, taking into account the likely effects such as of the pollution on the health, living conditions and the natural environment, as well as the potential sensitivity of the site to the wider area and the impacts that could arise from development. So it's important to note that a significant volume of concerns have been raised by neighbours, the local ward representative and Thetford Town Council with regards to the development's proposal adverse amenity impacts, which is considered to be an intensification of use in the much larger property, which in their view would generate persistent noise from activities associated with the proposed use, in this cumulative impact being incompatible within a tightly knit residential area. So we obviously share these concerns, as well as the extension of the overall planning unit being extended closer to residential dwellings to the south and to the east, or in an already tightly knit area. So obviously we do not have a submission of a noise impacts assessment, as well as an operational management plan, and obviously the informal mitigation measures that have been outlined within the information supplied with the application, in our view, are not enforceable via the imposition of planning conditions. So although Environmental Health have raised no objection, they recommend that a noise management plan be submitted via pre-commencement condition to secure this further information as to how the development can mitigate its intensification of noise impacts through the additional children on site. However, we question whether such a condition could be enforceable without the attendance to the nursery all day, every day when it's in operation. Also, the supervision to children will not present unacceptable noise levels from the children playing, crying, screaming, etc. during the day, and on that basis, and due to the proposed intensification, which the applicants, in our view, haven't addressed, the amenity of the neighbouring properties is considered to be significantly impacted by the proposals. And obviously, it's important to note that Environmental Health are, in their role, are required to assess compliance of condition, are not required to assess compliance of conditions, nor will they assess general impacts on amenities such as disturbance, only unacceptable noise levels, and this does not prevent amenity impact from occurring from this development in officers' review, which is obviously given significant weight in the overall plan balance. And obviously, with the absence of a baseline noise assessment, the application also fails to demonstrate whether development proposal can appropriately mitigate the additional noise increase resulting from the increase in children numbers. Obviously, as discussed within the supplementary report, further points have been made by the applicant over the modest improvement to the amenity for the existing neighbouring property. However, this fails to recognise the harm that is going to be shifted to the new neighbouring properties to either side of 34 Old Croxton Road, which in our view results in an increased noise generation to the detriment of nearby residents. So yes, we feel that a strong policy conflict with how policy comment 3 of the Breckland local plan with regards to noise and general nuisance. So these amenities adversely impacted. So in addition, we have significant concerns with the provision of the on-site parking and the driveway area, which is obviously in current residential use for 34 Old Croxton Road, which is proposed to serve the existing a new nursery, and obviously these are also key considerations raised by the neighbours in the Thetford Town Council. And obviously through this intensification of use, we, in our view, feel that there's going to be a vehicular intensification of Old Croxton Road, placing additional pressure on the on-street parking and obstructing vehicle access on the street on a residential road that already comprises of existing extensive parallel on-street parking with limited off-street parking provisions. So concerns have also been raised over the lack of detailed information regarding the location of on-street parking. However, this has since been supplied by the applicant, which you would have seen in the site plan. So it's important to note that they are proposing 4 parking spaces with 1 drop-off and 3, so it's 3 parking spaces here with 1 additional parking spot for the staff pick-up drop-off area. So it's important to emphasise that the council's adopted car parking standards state that 1 space per full-time equivalent staff plus 1 additional drop-off space is required for nursery developments of this nature. And it's important to note that these are maximum standards and it's considered to be in a sustainable location, where we could alternatively consider that lower parking standards could be considered. However, given the nature of the existing street, with the limited on-street parking provision, this provision is not considered to be acceptable when looking at these standards, with only half the spaces required being provided on site. So in order to take the highways authority's guidance, we require there to be additional space to provide for 3 vehicles, which should be 7.5 to 8 metres wide by 6 metres long in terms of the access, as well as an additional 6 metres should be allowed for a vehicle to exit out of a parking space, whereas you can sort of see here, it's very tightly knit and there's only 3.8 metres of width to allow for vehicles to enter and leave this parking space at its widest point. And on this basis, we consider that it's unlikely that 3 spaces provided would be usable for parking for this development. And obviously, in relation to drop-offs, which are intended to take place between 7:30 and 9 and 4 p.m. and 6 p.m, we consider that these are times which there'll be a high demand for parking on this existing residential street. So again, the applicant has put forward management measures. However, we do not consider these to be enforceable via suitably worded planning conditions, as obviously human nature cannot be adequately could be conditioned. So we feel that ultimately the proposed provision for on-site parking falls well short of the Highways Authority adopted standards as set out in the committee and supplementary reports, and therefore we feel there is significant policy conflict with policy TR02 of the Breckland local plan, as well as we consider that the adverse amenity impacts generated from this parking shortfall also there is policy conflict with Commo 3 of the Breckland local plan. So in the overall plan imbalance, the significant adverse amenity impacts on the proposals outweigh the limited benefits of the development proposals as a whole. And we feel that these fail to accord with the policies within the Breckland local plan and the NPPF, and therefore the officer recommendation is one of refusal for the reasons for refusal outlined in the committee and supplementary reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Westman, would you like to go first or last?
Last, please, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We've got Paul Brooker, please, who's an objector. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, the objection is from speaking for the residents of the road. There'll be an increase of approximately 50% in vehicle drop-off and pick-up. The noise levels in the garden regarding children play, at the moment, there's quite a lot of noise. You have to bear with me because I never spoke like this before. But there's also a problem with the academy, because that is the main thoroughfare for children walking to the academy and coming home, which increases the congestion and pedestrian use of that road significantly. I don't feel that the highways carried out a full survey of that road at any time, a proper survey. It's a Victorian street, narrow, congested. Vehicles often cannot traverse the road, often. I have various photographs on my tablet if anyone wants to look at them, but it's just not the right place for that kind of volume of traffic, dropping off, picking up. You know, we've never ever had a problem with the nursery as is, ever. There's never been a complaint, ever. There's never ever official complaint at all about the nursery as it is at the moment. But it's the increased volume that we're going to get of parents dropping off. And as you just said in your comments, parents do not think about what they're doing when they're dropping off and picking up their children. All they're interested in doing is getting in, getting out, gone. You know, we have to park on the pavement anyway, you know, as residents. Often we cannot park. So on those grounds, I'm hoping the council will refuse this application, because I think it's in detriment to the health and well-being of the residents of Old Croxton Road. And as you can see by the amount of numbers of objections, which is substantial. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Paulo Mirles and Andrea Long. Are you sharing time or? We are. Okay, I'll leave it to 3 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Am I on now? Yeah. I'm the agent for the nursery. As you'll hear, and as you've heard, and if you've seen from your committee report, your officer indicates that the principle of development is acceptable and this is a sustainable location. The issues here are around noise and parking. The need for nursery provision in Thetford is not disputed, and the concerns that have been raised are those by the neighbours. It wasn't necessarily clear from the officer presentation just now, but highways are not objecting, and the environmental health officer is not objecting. There are no objections from those relevant consultees. There is an existing nursery here. There is already a nursery taking place in a semi-detached house that shares a party wall with another house that does not have any parking. What the proposal gives you is a nursery that moves along away from that semi-detached house. It has a bigger house, has a bigger garden, more outbuildings, and actually allows for some off-street parking and drop-off. Now that is an improvement in the situation for at least some of those residents. It represents an improved position. The nursery's been operating from its existing base for over 13 years without any problems. There's been no formal noise complaints and nothing, because it's well managed. It's a nursery that's got an excellent Ofsted rating. It's a good nursery. The position changed when the previous application to have a nursery in 2 buildings was lodged. One of the things that would remind members is that obviously there is nobody around at weekends and evenings. There is no noise at all. There is no parking that is happening, and there are probably very few locations where that would necessarily happen if that house was in residential use. The applicants withdrew the previous application and followed to the letter the pre-application advice that they were given, and that's why we have submitted the current application in the way that we have and with the information that we have. We've recognised that there will need to be a link between the existing nursery and reverting that back to a residential dwelling, and that is covered in our supporting information. The new nursery creates more jobs and allows more parents to return to work and contribute to the economy of Thetford. The Traquinas nursery employs 52 people across the various nurseries and other enterprises that it has in Thetford. It's an excellent rated, it's well managed, and the existing conditions that are on the existing nursery are complied with, and the same will happen in the new one. The issues raised can be mitigated and they can be addressed, and the nursery is well run. The new nursery provides for improving opportunities for improving noise and parking provision over that of the current situation. The economic benefits of the nursery are legitimate planning matters that you can take into account when deciding this application. And given the absence of the consultees for noise and highways making formal objections, and the opportunities afforded by the new nursery to contribute to Thetford in its widest sense, we ask that you approve this application.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Paolo.
Sorry. You actually went 3 minutes and
Did I?
29 seconds.
Sorry.
You should have stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Yeah. I will, because I like members to hear from the horse's mouth as such. So can you do just a minute?
So my name's Paolo, and together with my wife, we own Traquinas Childcare and Nina's Foundation. Today, we're not standing here to ask to build something huge or out of place. We're simply asking permission to move next door to improve what we already have for our children and for the families that rely on us every single day. For almost 15 years, we have dedicated our lives to supporting this community. We have cared for children through their first words, first friendships, and first steps into the education. We have supported parents returning to work. We've supported families struggling financially, children with additional needs, and parents who simply needed someone to listen. This nursery has never been just a business to us, it's our life work. And yet for over a year, this process has been, let's say, painful. We are not asking to introduce childcare into a residential area. Nurseries and schools exist throughout Thetford neighbourhoods because families need them. We have operated at the same location for years without complaints, and with 5,000 more houses being built in Thetford, the need for childcare would only grow.
Thank you. Before I go to members, could I just have it Could I just have it confirmed that the numbers presently are 24 and they're going to go up to 40? Oh, 25. Oh, that's even worse.
24
Right.
is your permission.
You've got one hidden up in a cupboard somewhere. And it's to go up to 40. And as small as the children are, they still come in big packaging when they arrive and depart. No, right, thank you. It's open to questions from members. Oh, yeah, because he's gone down there.
Thank you, Chairman.
Musical chairs, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to give the Traquinas application a big push. I think it's an excellent business. It's been going strong, as you've heard, for over 13 years. They've got an excellent way of working with the parents so that everything in terms of the timetable is staggered. The cars arriving are staggered. I went to visit it at the busiest possible time. That was Monday morning last week. And the arrivals were as forecast. They were staggered. The children going outside, those times are staggered. So the noise levels were, in my opinion, completely acceptable. The quality of staff beyond reproach. They've had Ofsted excellence. The number of staff that they employ, that's going to be increased, as you've heard. So that has a multiplier effect in the local economy. It makes the town of Thetford all the more attractive for prospective parents. We've just heard the figure 5,000 extra properties being built around the town. Noise management plan suggested, and issues can be mitigated is what I've written down. So the highways and the environment aspect of it are not objections. So to pull those threads together, an excellent existing business which is looking for a modest increase into better premises, I urge you to approve it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Open to questions from members. Councillor Atterwill.
Chairman, I think in the highway matters, did I not read somewhere that there was concerns raised by the East of England ambulance service, that they have had problems down that road in the past, and they have raised concerns about this? I hear what the agent had to say about the parking, but the fact is you're not improving the parking on the current situation. You're trying to expand limited parking, which isn't really enough for a larger expansion of the use of the site. I mean, this glass of water I have here, the glass contains the water, but if I take that jug and I put too much water in it, I've got a problem. And that is what I think will happen down Croxton Road. I don't object to the application on the basis of I believe it's a good business. You know, I don't have a problem. I think the noise and that can be mitigated and all of that. I just think this is the wrong location to expand this business based on that highway premise. And I do take the point that the resident says, we see it outside all our local schools, for instance, where parents turn up and that's complete chaos outside the school because they're all vying to get as close to the school gate as possible. And I do believe that we will have problems like that along Croxton Road. So I'm pleased to say, for Becky's sake, I am really pleased to support the officer's recommendation on this occasion. But I just wanted to clarify that about the ambulance service. Thank you.
Can I just say before we move on, I was actually quite surprised within the chairman's presentation the other day that the ambulance station was actually there. I didn't realise after all these years it had stayed in its original location, and I just thought by now surely it would have moved. So it's in the wrong location. Councillor Blackburn, please.
Yeah, I know the site well, and I have been past there recently, and the noise from the children in the background is, well, from 24 children playing outside. It's a hell of a disturbance, and I wouldn't want to, unfortunately, live next door or within 50 metres of that place. It is so disturbing. There is a huge effect on the local people from the noise of the children having fun, playing. I completely agree with Roger, the congestion down that street. I've been up and down it many times, biking up there to go to the sports centre. You can't get there at certain times because of stuff parking on the playground, on the pavement. It's chaos. Now, to increase this by 50%, which in fact you are doing, is going to make it worse. It's not 50% of children, it's 50% of the cars taking those children. And it's a very, very, very busy road leading out onto a major road. Congestion is going to be hell, but it's the amenity of the people living nearby, for me, that would be the major concern.
Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. You could confirm a couple of things for me. At the moment, there is no parking on site, and there will be parking on site if this is approved. So that, in that respect, is an improvement. The other thing about the ambulance station, when I was looking at it the other day, I got the impression that one end of the road is blocked off and the ambulance station is at the other end, so it wouldn't have to go past the nursery. Am I right? No. I've got somebody nodding and somebody shaking their head.
Sorry, sir, it's not blocked off. No, because you can go out. Yeah. So do the ambulance don't get restricted?
Yes, that Vicarage Road and Old Croxton Road are very hard to traverse because of the congestion of traffic.
But for the ambulances? Oh, yeah. Please.
Just want to be apologies. Just want to be fair. So this is the bottom, if I want to use the bottom end of Croxton Road. The ambulance station is at the top end of Croxton Road. I think what the gentleman, the top end of Croxton Road is a dead end, if you like. But what the gentleman is explaining is that it's a circular route and both roads are two-way. So round, did you say Vicarage Road? Apologies. So that you can. And what is the main frontage road that you come down onto Croxton Road? Is that Thetford Road or Norwich Road? So I think what so you're right, Keith, sorry, Councillor Gilbert, in that at the bottom of Croxton Road onto Norwich Road is in and out, and that road is both ways. The ambulance station is further up Croxton Road, and there is a dead end at the top of that Croxton Road, but there is also a circular route, and both routes are two ways, round Norwich Road, Vicarage Road, Croxton Road in a circular route, and I think that's what that gentleman is referring to. Apologies, I just wanted to be fair to both
And that
parties.
is the way the ambulances use? No, they don't? Oh, they use both, which, yeah.
If there's an emergency in Old Croxton Road, they have to come up.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, super. Got Councillor Bambridge, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify two things, we have two applications for us, one to convert a house into a nursery and the other to convert a nursery into a house. And yeah, and it will become clear in a minute where I'm coming from. And I'm just wondering about the logistics of those two applications happening, because the agent said something about moving the nursery from one building into two. And I just wondered whether there is an intention for both of those buildings to form part of the nursery.
Sorry, Councillor Bambridge, there was a previous application that the applicants actually withdrew, which is what the agent was referring to in that comment of making one building into two. What this application for consideration before you, what the agent's point was, not putting words in their mouth, was this is a betterment to the previous application. So rather than increasing the numbers and being attached to a building, they're going into a detached building with all the benefits that the agent set out in their presentation. So ignore the bit about being attached to, because that was the previous withdrawn application. That's not for consideration today.
Right.
Did that answer for
you? So number
no.
36 will be a house. No, I got my numbers right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to have to say it as a mother and a grandmother. I just am amazed that anyone objects to the sound of children playing. And that's just an excuse for NIMBYism as far as I'm concerned. We had a similar application in Wotton for a nursery not long ago. And I just want to point out that I know every application is judged on its own merits, but I just want to point out that the committee approved that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very similar application which I mentioned to the officers at the time.
Pardon?
It was a very similar application which I mentioned to the officers at the time. Yes, different routes out, but there was housing around it. There wasn't a restriction of parking. I said similar. I didn't say it was identical. It's a different house as well. It was a new house and it was red. Any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Blackburn, please.
Yeah, just very briefly on the access into that Croxton Road. It's an absolute bottleneck. If there's something trying to get out of Croxton Road to turn right or left, you cannot get any other traffic up there. So we are really adding to the problems by increasing the traffic flow up that road.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, my question actually is if there's any more provision to make parking on site. As a firefighter's wife, I'm actually really shocked that the fire service haven't lodged an objection to this, because looking at the photographs that were provided, when there's cars even parked staggered, it may be okay for a small vehicle or even a medium-sized family vehicle to navigate roads such as that. But for a fire engine that's quite rigid, it can be quite difficult. So I am shocked that the fire service haven't lodged any concerns. But maybe if there was provision for more off-street parking or even off-street drop-off, that might be a mitigation that we could look at.
So as set out in the supplementary report, which is set out in some detail, there's no provision for, so the plan in front of you shows 4 spaces, wherein actually, as set out in the supplementary report, the site can't adequately accommodate those 4 spaces because there isn't 6 metres of reversing space to get in and out of them. Plus the spaces themselves are substandard in width. Plus you're manoeuvring around the site, going around obstacles like cycle stores. So I think in answer to your question, no, there isn't space, because there isn't space for the 4 that's shown on the plan that was submitted with the application.
So the 4 already shown aren't fit for purpose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further questions? No. Okay, thank you very much. So with regards to this item at Thetford, PL 2026-0064, this is a full application minimal. Your officer's recommendation is one of refusal. Could I have a show of hands, please? And those against? 2. Okay. Okay. This item is refused. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we're nearly there, members. We move on to, as the room gets cleared, item 10, which is applications determined by the Director of Planning and Building Control. This is there for your information. And item 11, the appeal summary, again, there for your information. If I could just hold for one moment before I close the meeting so we can clear the room. Thank you. Goodbye. Okay, thank you. Oh, please.